Hello, a very good evening to one and all. I would first like everyone else who has already done that, to thank the organizers, these three individuals, because I think we sometimes forget the efforts of individuals. If we were to think about how we even have begun to recognize rape, first it was no recognition of any form of violence. Then it was recognition of physical violence, because that's at least a little bit easier to accept. Then it was recognition of rape, sexual assaults, etc. Then now we are trying to recognize and accept that such a thing as marital rape does take place. The shifts throughout does not take place in isolation. It does not come because politicians woke up on the right side of the bed and said, let's change it and be kind to women. It is a case of individuals lobbying, working hard, putting in a lot of extra hours to get things done. Why? Because of a very simple reason: no one should be treated less. So we come from that kind of a place, and I think these three individuals and all their supporters around have been doing that, and I think they deserve a big round of applause. Right, with that now let's get to the statistics. I think Benny has already mentioned some statistics. I managed to find some, but they are all outdated. 1975 American statistics. That 8% of the 900 randomly selected women in the US reported rape by a husband. Another American study showed that from 930 interviews conducted with women across all races and class, which is quite important for us to remember, it cuts across race, class, educational levels, etc., that sexual violence within a marriage is the most neglected area of all. A 1994 survey shows that out of the 10.4% women who had been raped by husbands or de facto spouses, and a further 2.3% were raped by estranged husbands and de facto spouses. So they have actually left your marital home, and the rate for at least 2.3% does continue in these statistics. And as Benny has also mentioned, what really are our statistics locally? What I could find is that the MCYS website showed that for the year 2005, we have 124 rape cases. It has not been recently updated, and so you switch over to the Singapore Police Force website, and you find a rise in rape cases since 2006. 118 in 2006, 129 in 2007, 172 in 2008. And the numbers are going up. There's no delineation by age, by relationship, etc. And these are only reported cases. So it's going to be very hard for us to know really, out of those numbers that I've cited, even how many of them are really within a situation of a marriage, within a situation of a relationship. So, and how many more, as we all know, will keep going unreported. So, what types of marital rape does take place? This I pulled out from a book, License to Rape, Sexual Abuse of Wives. Force-only rapes, which means he forced her to have sex, but without all the battering and the beating. Battering rapes, where the rape is accompanied by other forms of violence, as Benny has also taken us through in greater depth. Obsessive rapes. This is where men are perverse or sick in their behavior and want to engage in sick or perverse sexual activities with their wives. They will often tie up the wife, and they will put different kinds of objects into the vagina. Sadism. This is linked to obsessive rapes. Here also there's torture rituals such as biting, burning the wife with cigarettes, injuring sexual areas of the body. Anger rapes, which are committed primarily to express hostility to women, to retaliate against them and to hurt them. Power rapes are committed to assert dominance and control over women, as has been discussed, and it is not really the intention of the husband to harm. He has to deal with his own issues, and one way that he sees himself, coping with himself, is to assert his dominance over his wife. Now, why is it important to understand the behavior around rapes? I think only in understanding the behavior around rapes, maybe we get some clue into male psyche. We also need to understand the behavior of a person who has been raped. I think Dana brought up examples of gender stereotyping, and I think this is the area that most have the least understanding, despite the feminist movement, the women's movement. That we think if you have been violated, we stand in our own shoes and we say, oh, you are educated, you have been violated, therefore what's the big deal? How can you live like this? You should make a police report. You should do this, you should do that. But we forget that the shoes that we are walking in is our own shoes. Do we know what life is like when she looks at her children and she knows that if she reports her husband, he will go to jail? And therefore, what are her choices? She will make some choices not to report or to report. And even our own shoes. Maybe right now our circumstances are quite good. What if we marry this guy whom we love so much? Or what if this guy whom we love so much suddenly loses his job and he's in some fierce addiction over gambling and he cannot deal with himself? What if you become the punchbag? Rape, violence in the home is always something that people do not like to talk about. What more to be raped by someone whom you love, by someone whom you think you could trust? It is a betrayal of the highest order. It's very hard to overcome that. And therefore, it comes to my next point, the institution of marriage. While we talk about gender stereotypes, we also have to talk about how we are conditioned where the institution of marriage is concerned. It is all romanticized, and I don't mean it in a bad way, and idealized, that marriage will be forever, marriage will be filled with love every waking day, marriage will be filled with a lot of trust. But marriage sometimes does not work along those lines. How are you going to tell your friends and your neighbors who are all in this, I don't mean it derogatorily again, in this fluff of marriage, to say that mine is not that way? We all are bought into a certain concept of marriage. We forget that marriage is a lot about trials and tribulations and how you overcome them. Add to that the second part about why does this happen. We have not talked about cultural situations. In some cultures, it is still today that a woman is supposed to submit within a marriage. It is conditioned. In fact, many religions throughout the years have actually advocated through their own religious teaching, or rather interpretation of the religious teachings, that a woman's role is to be the second person within the relationship. And this evolves at various stages depending on the depending on the country, depending on the religion, depending on what you seek as information for yourself and be analytical in the information that you are seeking.